What's going on, guys? I'm here with Van Tate, 2020 Sportscaster of the Year from New Mexico. I believe this is your 12th time winning, which is super incredible. Congratulations again, and thank you for joining me. Um, Really quickly, I just want to talk about Van. Van has been covering New Mexico sports for the last 20 years. He has covered some of the biggest sporting events in the world, including the Indy 500, bowl games, NFL games, NCAA tournaments, and just a bunch more. But yeah, being a 12-time winner, he clearly knows a thing or two about the industry, and I'm looking forward to hearing from him as I ask him the questions. But first up, Van, just out of curiosity, because it's super useful for younger people like me in the industry or getting into the industry. Can you talk a little bit about what your career path was like, getting to the position you're in now? Was it linear? Were there ups and downs? Did you know what you were going to do, right out of college? Can you explain a little bit of that for us?
Well, there's always ups and downs and everything. And as far as me getting in my career, I started from the news route. Believe it or not, I was one of those believers of take whatever you get and work your way to your goal, because you know how these jobs aren't plentiful. There's a TV sports, everybody wants to do sports. And so I was overnight news photographer, kept working at it on my days off. I used to take my gear home and go out and do feature stories. And I'd show them to like some of the people around the station, like, hey, what do you think of this or whatever? And I had a tape going so I could get a job one day. I was just making a resume tape. And the weekend sports guy at the time at the station I was working at, excuse me, he saw the tape. He asked me to see it. And I said, no, because I didn't know what he was going to do. So he saw the tape. He actually used one of the stories in his sportscast, which he didn't, you got to go through news directors, or you can't just approve somebody on the air yourself. And he did it anyway. And so that's how I got on. The news director said, we need this guy to be on all the time. And so I went from news to sports.
Awesome. That moment must have been crazy for you. Something you've been probably waiting for, and it just happened so quick like that. That's amazing. Now you're in this position now, and you've been doing this for a long time. What currently is your favorite part of your job? What do you get the most satisfaction from in your role right now?
What I get the most satisfaction from is the relationships, because you establish these relationships with the people that you're covering, some of the people you're covering, because you talk to them all the time, and you can't help but to have some kind of relationship with them. I'm not talking about trying to go and just cultivate a relationship because that's your goal. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you cover them so much that the relationship just happens. And so that's been the funnest thing, knowing people away from what they do, because then they're not just this athlete filling this void of entertainment. There's somebody, they're a person. And so that's been fun. I'll give you an example of that is even the MMA Holly Holm. Well, when I did a story on Holly Holm, the first story I ever did on Holly Holm, she was a aerobics instructor who was thinking about getting into boxing. So I got to watch her whole boxing career, watch her whole MMA career. I went through the whole journey with her. Somebody like even a world champion boxer for the late, great Johnny Tapia, watching his career and going through all his career and stuff like that. The Unsers, when they were still racing, doing stuff at the Indy 500 with those guys, so the relationships that you build with the people are just fun. I mean, it's fun to just, like I said, to watch them develop, watch them become more than just an athlete on the field or they're a person.
Right. That's amazing too, because you kind of feel like you're part of that process in a sense, because you watch them progress, right? Like you talked about Holly Holm, who's one of the biggest, female fighters in the entire world. And I would consider her elite. I mean, I'm a big sports fan, so maybe not, but I consider that, a household name. And that's crazy where you get to watch these people kind of grow in a sense, and vice versa too. They see you progress to your career. I see how that could be really satisfying and just an enjoyable experience, really. Yeah.
They're your friends, so it's different. Like, I'll give you an example, like with Kenny Thomas, former NBA player. I remember his first game with Sacramento when he got traded. Me and a guy who I work with, we did a lot of stuff with Kenny. he had this big game. He said, we ought to call Kenny because we were at his house watching the game.
Right.
So I called him up, and it's just funny because these guys coming off of the court, and you're talking to them, but it's not that you're just talking to them because they're just somebody that people are idolizing or whatever. That's your friend,
right?
That's going back to what you asked me earlier. That's by far the coolest thing because you just. I think too much, but we just put them in a box.
Right.
Go play. And instead of seeing them as human,
Right. And I honestly, and from what I've heard in different interviews and podcasts and stuff, like athletes appreciate that just as much, being viewed as a friend, like you said, not being put in a box, but being viewed as, a person and an athlete and a coworker in a sense, because you need them, they need you, right? It's give and take. I think that's a very good point. So I know you've had a very long career filled with fantastic achievements and stuff like that. But to you, what has been the highlight of your career in your personal opinion?
Man, there's been so many different things. There was one boxing match that was huge that I was at. And a lot of people are going to remember this match because it was a time when boxing was struggling with its credibility and stuff like that. Danny Romero and Johnny Tapia fighting in Las Vegas. That was a highly promoted card. It made a lot of money. I think it sold out. I remember sitting ringside at that fight because I know both guys. Knew Johnny before he passed and know Danny very well. And I was sick to my stomach watching that fight.
Yeah.
Because like watching two of your friends fight and you're
right.
just like, wait, I don't you're gonna win? Wait, no, you can't win. Why
do
you not do that?
Right.
So I think that's a highlight just because it was weird, man. It was weird to cover that because
right.
I mean throw up sick. I'm not talking about just
right.
I'm not saying it words. I was physically ill.
Right. And yeah, because boxing is like, it's not like, two basketball players and they're playing against each other. Basketball is a different sport than boxing. Boxing is like you're fighting, like that's, physical altercation, that's one-on-one. And yeah, I can see how that could be definitely like jarring in a sense. It's like watching those two go at it. But you also, it's like, who do you root for in a situation like that? It's like, man, what were the thoughts going through your head in the fight other than throwing up?
I was just, honestly, the thoughts going through my head, hurry to finish. I want this to be, I don't even care who wins anymore. Just finish it.
Right.
Because it was that weird. And they put on a good show. It ended up being Ring Magazine's Fight of the Year and all that stuff.
Wow.
And so that was a good thing. And before I go any further, another thing I wanted to bring up was it was also, you see different things that you don't even think about sometimes too, covering all these sports. And one thing I never thought about watching races on TV is how fast the cars were going because, like this is like they're just going around a track.
Right.
Being at the to see how those cars are just a blur, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And it makes it the sport. I had so many of those. I had a lot of those moments. I had a moment like that when I had to sit on the clay court watching Steffi Graf and Arantxa Sanchez Vicario play in a final with what used to be the Family Circle Cup in Hilton Head. And I remember just getting an appreciation for tennis because I just never paid attention to the sport. Like I paid attention to it, but not like in detail. Watching those two play, I had a different appreciation for it. So are we covering these sports? We're seeing such a high level of play that it makes you really appreciate what's going on.
Truly. And that's a good point. And I like, I've never been to a NASCAR race or anything like that, but I'm sure it would be shocking. I remember for me personally, one of the biggest moments for me as a sports fan, like I'm a diehard Yankees fan. I grew up in New Jersey, so near New York. And I remember going to the old Yankee Stadium for the first time and looking, and, we had the cheap seats all the way in the top. And I remember I was probably like 2009. So I was 10 years old. 10, 11 years old. And I remember looking over the guardrail and the field looked like the biggest thing I've ever seen. It literally looked like an ocean. Like it was massive. Yeah. And I remember like taking that in and I was like, this is not Yes Network anymore. Like this is not television. This is real life and I'm here. And I remember just sitting there and being like, this is a whole different like world. And it was just,
Right.
I don't think I could ever forget that like glimpse moment I had there. And I look forward to experiencing that in other, facets as well, like tennis matches or NASCAR races or whatever.
Yeah, man. Like you made me think of something else too, like how covering sports, you might get to see somebody really well even make it. Alex Bregman, the Houston Astros third base.
Yeah.
Well, when I was playing football in college, his dad was playing football also, baseball at New Mexico.
Wow.
We were next door dorms.
Wow.
And so I watched Alex grow up, and to watch him play to turn into this all-star baseball player is unbelievable.
That is truly something special. Yeah, because I hear some like people talk like the same thing. Like they played with some of these guys' parents, and now they're seeing them like grow up. Their kids growing up and coaching or playing, and that's insane. It's like one thing where it's like your peers, but like your peers' children's, it's like generations and generations. I feel like that's always been a cool thing as well. And a good thing for those athletes too, because being an athlete is hard, mentally, physically.
No, it is.
Being able to like, talk to people that, of course, if you're grateful enough to have a parent who's been through a similar thing, then that's great. But, sometimes you want to reach out to people that aren't, related to or something to kind of relate. I think that's important. That's incredible. Yeah. I watched Alex Bregman a lot. As a Yankees fan, we don't have the best relationship with the Astros, but that's awesome. And he's a great player. That's really cool to hear.
And I've been doing this long enough to see not only him because I knew his dad, but like I remember Brian Urlacher being in ninth grade playing high school football, and we were just going like, man, this guy's unbelievable.
Right.
And he dominating games, and he played all these different positions. People know him as a linebacker, but Urlacher was a really good receiver, man. He could just torch.
Yeah. I tell people all the time about like these star athletes, like they're like some of them are like really just insanely talented. Like they'll never pick up a basketball in their life and they'll go on a basketball court and be the best player. And sometimes that's just like innate. Like I hear stories about LeBron, how, people don't even talk about the fact that he ever picked up a football and he was like an all state, like the number one ranked football player in the state. And sometimes there's just people that are just like, it feels like they're a different breed of like, when it comes to an athlete. And that's incredible. I remember, I know I want to ask you one more question. I don't want to take up too much time with this, but like you said, I remember when I was in high school, I was in a classroom and I was like 12 years old and we were doing like travel baseball meeting or whatever. But I remember the high school gym was in like rocking, like it was going crazy. And at that time, my high school basketball team was pretty good. We were ranked number 2 in the state, and we were playing the number 1 team in the state, which was St. Joe's down here in the state championship. And I remember the gym being packed and going crazy. I had no idea what was going on. And I remember walking out and seeing like my older brother and his friends. And I went up to them. I talked. I was like, because we were a great team. We had like 4 players go D1 that year. And I was like, well, we must have won, right? Like what happened? And you were like, we lost by 40. And I was like, who was on the other team? And they were like, this guy, Karl Anthony Towns. I don't know who he is, but these are 4 D1. And to me, these guys look like giants. And I look across the way and I see Kat like leaving the gym, and it's like a whole different, like he made them look small and he made them look like they've never picked up a basketball again before. And those are like what I consider high level athletes. So it's really just crazy to think about sometimes how good some of these guys actually are.
Urlacher, a lot of people don't know this, but when you were making the distinction between LeBron, Urlacher could have played the NBA. Urlacher was a phenomenal basketball player.
Yeah.
Urlacher was very good. Yeah. But he always talked to
considered one of the greatest linebackers ever too. Yeah. Like he's And I feel like you need that in a sense too, which is just like playing those different sports. I know a lot of people talk about it now, how it's kind of like more kids are going into like, they're more one track, they're playing one sport. But I do believe in like some athletes just benefit from playing multiple sports, and it helps them in whatever they end up going in because it teaches them certain skills. Yeah, for sure.
And we used to do all of them. When I was growing up, the guy who still had the Super Bowl rushing record, Timmy Smith, we played football together, and he played everything. He played this is how baseball. He played basketball and football. He was really good in everything. He was in track. He was a really all-around athlete. And so I think that's lost on people as far as in athletics. You know, like you said, these kids specialize in one thing now, and they're just not the same, man.
Right, exactly. And, you know, that's great. And they'll be incredible at the sports. But I just feel like, you know, certain sports teach you different lessons and teach you different skills. Yeah. And I think that's really important because, you know, and like you talk about with your career, and I hear others talk about their careers, like you never know what you really love until you kind of like do a little bit of everything, right? You might think you love something, and then you might do something else and you might like that more, or enjoy that more. And that could be professionally or whatever the case may be. But yeah. So next question. So for people like me that are younger, and some people who are maybe a little older, a little younger, my age, who are trying to get into the sports media industry, what do you think is the best piece of advice you could give someone looking to enter this industry?
I would tell you to learn how to do everything you can, you know, like editing, shooting, writing, whatever. Learn how to do everything, because you will be hard to replace if you know how to do everything. Because there's some people that have trouble picking up the camera. They don't want to touch the camera and stuff like that. You don't want to be that guy. You want to be the guy who's the hustler, who does everything. But most of all, and especially if you're going to go on the air, be you. Don't try to, you know, it's good to, you could get some tips from somebody, their delivery or whatever, or how they're doing things. You can get some ideas, but just do it like how you would do it. Because at the end of the day, out of all the people in this world, God made one you, one. So your originality is what's going to help you have sustaining power, because there's just one you. There's not another you. So why would you be somebody else? So that's what I would.
Right. That's very, very important. And thank you for that, because, you know, I feel like a lot of people, it's always about like, you know, trying to emulate and be like other people. But sometimes the best thing you could do is be yourself. Like you said, there's only one you. And that's important, because
remember who emulated somebody and they stuck around a long time. I mean, you name somebody now who just, they emulate, you know, like all the people you think about, they have their own style. They're them, you know, like the people, look at the old broadcasters that are still around. There's only one them, right? You know, man.
Yeah. And like you said, you mentioned like, it's important to learn and like take tips and like cadences from people, but like at the same time, and you made another good point there. That's like, how many people do you know that was like the best at being someone else, right? Like you could emulate everything you do after someone, but you know, you'll just end up being like a little bit worse version of them when you could be the best version of yourself, which is something that sounds cliche, but hearing it from someone like you, like that's important, because it's true. It's very true. It can't be said enough. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, like, even if it's the slightest little difference, it's you. And that's what people will remember. Like, oh, like even a music group, you know, their sound, you know, if there's a group that, you know, their sound, but groups that try to emulate another band, that doesn't work. But a group that gets their own sound, every time they come on, I know who that is.
Right. Right. So, and that's way more sustainable too. Like because for you, that's just you being you. But for someone else, it's like, it's work for them to try to emulate, you know what I mean? It's like, if you're just being you and you're good at it, then that's just play to you. You're going to, you know, it's play, and you're going to enjoy doing that more than you would chasing someone else. And I that's a very important lesson. Yeah. So as a multiple time winner, have you been to the awards weekend?
Oh yeah, man. It's a good, the awards weekend is fun. It's I like talking to all the different sportscasters, and you know, like the last time I was there, I realized it's like there's been so many times, especially in our business, where you realize how small the world really is. The table I was at, Skip Bayless was at my table, and we're getting there to sit down. Here he comes, and the lady that he was with, who I still don't remember her name, but my wife knows her name, because this is what happened.
Are you saying his wife?
I think it was
Ernestine.
I don't know if they were married at the time.
Yeah, they're married now. I know that. Yeah.
Okay, so she was there. So she and my wife looked at each other and they were like, "Oh my God!" Oh, they started hugging and everything. I'm going like, "What is going on?" Each other when they were kids. I mean, like
Wow.
she was talking about eating over at her house and all this stuff, and I just couldn't believe this is a small world, man.
Yeah, it really is. And it's crazy because I realized that just in this interview, right? Like, you're talking about these people, like these names, you're mentioning these names that I know, like Brian Urlacher, Alex Bregman, Skip Bayless. Like, it's like along the line. It's like, that is true. The world's so small, and you never know who knows who, and how they met. Like you said, like that story with your wife. It's like, you never knew she knew this person, and then all of a sudden it's like, that's really something. Yeah. So I was
Hey,
gonna say, like, yeah.
I want to tell you one more thing that's crazy. I know you got stuff to do, but
No, you're good.
you
Yeah. Take your time.
Messina, football player who was on the Detroit Lions for a little while. At the same time, the Lions had picked up another receiver, Nate Hughes. That's my first cousin. So I'm talking to Carmen Messina because he used to be a Lobo, and I'm talking to him on the phone, and he was saying, like, I was telling him, "Hey, yeah, my cousin's in the NFL. I think he's about to go to a new team or whatever." And he said, "You talking about Nate Hughes?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "He's sitting here right here with me now." I couldn't believe it,
Yeah.
and he couldn't believe that was that's my first cousin. So
Right. That
yeah,
it's so crazy. Yeah. And now I see why you have such a love and passion for sports, and you do it because it's like, a lot of people view it as just like, it really is more than a game. And it's more like, it's about the relationships and the skills you learn on and off the field. And like we talked about earlier, like the media is just as big of a part as the athletes are, and the athletes vice versa. It's like, um, the world is so immersive. And I think that's what's so great about it. But, um, one more question, just cause I'm curious.
yeah.
How has your job kind of changed with the whole pandemic? What adjustments had to be made, if any, during the pandemic, and what new skills do you think you've learned because of that?
The one thing that's changed is scheduling. They don't want all of us in the building at the same time because they want to avoid people getting sick, and then you're knocking out so much of the crew that you don't have anybody to be on. So
Right.
what they've done for sports is I'm on 7 days and then I'm at home 7 days, where my weekend guy, he fills in for me the 7 days. And so I'm 7 days on, 7 days off. We're going to go back to a regular schedule like the second week in February. And the
Nice.
second thing is that unlike TV hasn't been like this for a while, because like you had to buy a satellite window or whatever to talk to somebody, but now we got Zoom. So if
Mhm.
there's somebody we really want to talk to and he's not in town, we can't get to him. Hey man, it revolutionized the game.
Yeah, definitely.
You can talk to somebody. You don't have an excuse now. You can't say like, "Oh yeah, he's out of state. Can't get to him." Hey,
Right.
call him up, see if he can jump on that link, and you're good to go. So
Right.
that's a game changer.
Yeah.
Even if you're so busy that you can't get out the door because you know how you're wearing so many multiple hats doing sports, and you need to interview this coach that lives like hours drive away from the station. Get him a Zoom link, and you got him.
Right. And like,
Really,
yeah, it's so huge. We wouldn't be having this interview right now if it wasn't for
exact.
Zoom, right? Literally, right? And like, these are the moments that are like really important. Like, it expands, like, the wisdom you laid out, and the tips, and all the stories that you brought into this like interview would have never been seen by me or a lot of other people who would be seeing it if it wasn't for Zoom. Um and obviously it's hard sometimes to find the positives in like such a, like in the pandemic, but like,
Yeah.
at least we get, some things like this, which I'm sure in some senses make your job easier. Like you said, like there's never really anyone that's unavailable in a sense. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's
If they
that
can
that
get
is awesome.
if they can pull that link in, you're good to go.
Which 99% of the time they could pull the link in for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they're not pulling it in, they don't want to do it.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
or they're
Exactly.
too busy. Some people, they do get
Yeah.
busy.
Yeah. That's like the 1%, like when like they are too busy. But no, this has been awesome. Thank you so much, Van. Congratulations again, for coming
Thanks.
on. If you want to say anything else before we go, I'm done with the questions. But if you want to say anything else, or if you want to thank anyone before we head off, you can go ahead and do that now.
You know what? I should say thanks to my weekend guy, Jared Chester, because he's a hard worker, and you can't get to hold an award like this if you don't have good help. So because people are recognizing you, and they're recognizing stuff that you're doing, but you have to help. You know how sports works,
right?
And so kudos to him, because he's in this day and age when it's hard to find good hard workers. He's old school. He's a throwback, and so it's been good to have a good young hard worker. I told him to keep doing what he's doing, and he's going to always be employed because his generation is different. So
right. Yeah. So shout out to him, and again, thank you so much for coming on, and congratulations again, man.
All right, thanks so